The Metis Tech Show.
Welcome to the Metis Tech Show, a show for HVAC professionals by HVAC professionals.
I like how you guys bounce back and forth between heat pump talk and food talk.
The Metis Tech Show.
Mitsubishi.
All right, so we're at the 2025 Diamond Service Group Conference in the Kalahari Resort in Round Rock, Texas.
Yeah.
All right, and so it's Monday, and last night, Steve, you and I came in last night,
Yeah.
and Ralph and Bryn, you guys came in just a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
Right? So last night, this place here has a Mexican restaurant downstairs, and we went there. I think there were 17 of us that went down there to eat. It was basically us and a few other folks from Mitsubishi and the whole AV crew that does the thing. And so they had birria. Steve, if you've listened to the podcast, you know Steve's got...
We've never talked about birria before.
Steve's got this, he's got, what's the word? It's not demented, it's an obsession.
Obsession.
Yeah, he's got this obsession with
Yeah.
birria tacos.
My kids caused it.
Right.
They made me make the birria.
But they had a birria burrito.
Yeah.
And that thing was amazing. It had rice in there, it had cheese in it, it's all rolled up. But you know, when you roll up a burrito and you got the seam,
Yeah.
that's where all the stuff falls out. They did something genius, amazing. They take that and they put the Mexican cheese on, that must have been a griddle or a frying pan, and they put the burrito seam side down.
Okay.
So they fried it on the cheese, and the cheese sticks to it, making like this seal, like this.
Yeah.
When you fry cheese, it gets all crunchy. And,
It was like
so
braised. It was braised shut.
good. Yeah, it was like no, yeah. It was like,
right?
it was more like
It was a
soft-
cheese
it was
braise.
It wasn't braised
more like
beef.
soft
It was.
solder.
Man, it was braised cheese. Genius. See? But yeah, let's talk about this resort. This place isn't small.
No,
No.
it's
This
huge.
place is gigantic. It's a gigantic water park. And what blows my mind is the outdoor portion of the water park, I heard, is closed
Yeah,
down.
it's closed down.
Because it's winter here. It's 95 degrees outside
Yeah,
right
it's,
now.
yeah, it's at least 90 anyway. And there's an indoor water park, and I'm not even, people think I'm exaggerating, but it's a half-mile walk to the room.
Yeah,
It is.
takes a minute,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not, it's pretty close to a
Yeah.
half-mile walk to the room. So you get your steps in. So I learned from, because we were here for the Diamond Contractor Summit last December.
Yeah.
We were here, and we had to go like another quarter mile last year, because we had to go downstairs.
Yeah,
and
you're going to
then
go down some
further
escalators and
more.
even further into the abyss.
Yeah.
Which we're going tonight. I think we're having dinner at like outside at a barn.
There's a
They
barn
have a
and
barn. They're going
outdoor
to have
dinner.
cigar rolling
Oh, wow.
at some point this week.
Yeah, that's
So
over here.
We'll do the play-by-play this week, and we'll talk about what's going on, because we're going to be here all week. We're going to be busting out podcast episodes,
Yeah.
sitting here and talking about everything. And we got Ralph Wolf
Ralph.
Here I am.
with us this week. We got a lot of.
Yeah.
We're going to have a lot of smart people here this
Yeah.
week.
A
Ralph,
lot of
you
special guests.
You
too.
still got your YouTube channel, right?
I do, but I'm not really active on it.
No? Okay.
Yeah, Ralph's kind of YouTube. He's kind of famous.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You know, you see
Well,
Ralph
some
ask him
circles.
for
In
his
my own mind.
autograph.
My own mind.
You know,
Yeah.
I was
They have
kind of
a-
starstruck when I met him. I was kind of,
Yeah.
I was.
but not anymore.
Not anymore.
I've known him for a while.
When I got here, I wasn't expecting it to be as big, or really what it was is like being at a resort. You realize like there's stores, there's restaurants, and then there's also activities. Like it's almost like when we were in Vegas. For
Yeah,
the
it's the
conference,
same.
it's like all in one. You just kind of come here and
You're just missing the slot
everything's taken care
machines
of.
and the gambling.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, there's a poker tournament tonight.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but it's not real money. They give you chips. That's why I'm not playing.
Well, this is an important event. You know, DSG is a Diamond Service Group member, and they are the first line of defense out in the field. They are who you call first for any tech support before you call customer care, right?
Yep.
They're the first to call, and they will come out and do site visits. They'll do and tell us a little bit about it, Ralph, because you were a DSG.
Oh yeah. So being a DSC is probably one of the most important things, because you have a relationship with the contractor.
Yeah.
You get that relationship, and unfortunately, I think there's a misconception with, and I tried my best to make this. People think, well, if I call the supply house, because that's where the DSC works at. He works at the supply house, and they're like, well, if I call the supply house, they're not going to have as much information as what the factory does. So I just want to call the 1-800 number, and I try to let people know that, hey, call the DSG because he has just as many resources as the guy that's answering.
And I'll be the first to
calls.
tell you that
Yes.
I know some very smart
Oh, yeah.
DSGs that I say all the time, they know our product better than us.
Well, I mean, there's a lot,
And
there's-
it's because they're
a
in
lot
the
of them
front
do.
lines.
There's a lot of other
You know?
things that go into it too, because here's what happens is, let's say you call tech support, you're on a job, and they say, well, replace the board, and you replace the board. Well, that didn't work, so now you have to call tech support back, right? And then, well, try this, and then so you try that, and it still doesn't work, and then the next thing they're going to say is, you have to get a local guy. Well, guess who the local guy is?
The DSG.
He's a DSG, and what happens is, when you call him, he's going to want you to go out to the job and call him from the job. Now you've been out there 3 times, and now you're going out a 4th. Now everybody starts to get upset, and at the end of the day, the end users who we're trying to protect, right?
Yeah.
Right, because they pay the money for the product. So if we can keep those guys happy, then everybody's happy.
Yeah,
Right.
agreed.
And usually we save our text. So when folks send us a text, we always tell them there's no way for us to reply back there. But right along these lines, back in September, actually just a couple of weeks ago, somebody from Idaho Falls, Idaho said, is there a tech support number I can call other than my DSG? Now, first of all, this is counterintuitive to what we're talking about because the DSG should be your first line of defense. But if you can't get a hold of your DSG or you don't know who your DSG is, there is an 800 number, and it's 1-800-433-4822. So typically we would have waited until we got enough mail, listener mail and text and everything to do an episode, but it's going to be a while for that. So I just wanted to answer that one. So if you're in Idaho Falls, Idaho, 1-800-433-4822. But I'm telling you, you really should call your DSG. I think that's the best bet. But
Yeah.
anyway, I just wanted to answer that email.
So yeah, this is a really important event, and we have a lot of breakout classes this week for the DSGs, getting them trained and just talking about a lot of new products that we'll be releasing. And Bryn, you're doing some of those classes. You're doing a class basically 3 different topics and one
Yeah.
or 3 or 4 different topics.
Yeah, kind of
You're doing
introducing some of the new products and then updating on what we've learned from the A2L.
A2L, you're doing A2L M&P update. You're doing an EcoDan,
EcoDen Underwater for the
And
residential,
what's
and
the
then the IntelliHeat for
IntelliHeat.
the A2L.
right? IntelliHeat for A2L. So
And then we have our simulators, our Mitsu cases. We have basically some cases with M series and P series heat pumps inside of a box. Each 2 or 3 DSGs per box.
Right.
And
Yep.
your class is basically the SDW controller,
Yep.
showcasing that, and we got maintenance tools for each
Yep.
DSG.
Going
to
to do
hook
maintenance tool for the first time since it came out. We're now doing maintenance tool during the DSG conference.
up. Yeah.
And,
So they each get a maintenance tool. They
Yep.
get to hook their computer up, and this is the M&P maintenance tool, right? So really cool stuff this week.
and this is, so we got a bunch of events that are coming up for us, Steve. You and I in November 18th and 19th, are going to the Heat Pump Summit in Worcester, Mass.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
And then we got the ACTI conference coming up in December in Nashville. And then in March, again, we got the ESCO show next March. So, and we'll be bringing the kit, I think, to all of them. We'll bring the podcast kit, get some good guests on there.
don't forget about the HVAC symposium was
Symposiums
Yep,
in January.
HVAC
Yeah, we'll be going to that
Yep.
too. I already made plans. I put a train the trainer in there the same week, so we'll already be there.
There you go.
That's thinking, Paul.
All right. Are we supposed to say welcome everybody to the Menace Tech Show?
They know where they are, but welcome to the Menace Tech Show. We're going to talk about blockages, restrictions.
Yeah.
right?
Restrictions. Now, I'm going to throw a disclaimer out there. I haven't been in a van in quite a long time, and I don't even remember what a restriction is. Never mind how to diagnose it and how to service
Most
it. and
likely,
troubleshoot it.
Paul,
it's like a bike, Paul.
the way we eat, we're probably restricted right now.
I'm restricted.
Our arteries are probably blocked pretty
Oh,
good.
there's no
So,
question.
Yeah,
Should probably
it's
flush
kind
it
of the
out
same,
with some
same
R11.
deal. And what happens to our blood pressure
My blood pressure?
when we get a restriction?
Oh, my blood pressure goes up.
Yeah. So
Yeah, my blood pressure
same
goes up.
thing. So what do you got to say about restrictions, Ralph? You got a story. You told me.
Oh yeah,
I got a story about.
I've got a
restrictions.
really good story, and it's about maintenance tool and the pack tool.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
So went and did a job site when I was at DSG, and put the pack tool on it because it was P series, and flipped the dip switches, and the liquid line was 11 degrees, and the suction line was 56. And it's like there's got to be something wrong with the pack tool. So I got the maintenance tool out. And then it was liquid line was 7 degrees, and the suction line was still 56 degrees. It's like, I was like, all right, there's 2 of those guys out there. And I said, hey, we need to recover the refrigerant out of the system, close the valves, disconnect the suction line, and you need to go up to the attic, take a rag with you, and disconnect the liquid line. And so the guy was out, after he got it pumped down, he was out there with his nitrogen. He was like, and it was all blowing back at him. He's like, man, this must be a bad restriction. And I told the guy upstairs, I said, move your hand a little bit, but keep the rag over it. And as soon as I said that, and he moved his hand, that nitrogen went through. And that guy upstairs said, man, I don't know what was in there, but it shot out.
Was he screaming?
He said it shot out like a bullet. And
Wow.
it whizzed right by his shoulder.
Wow.
If he would have been over, it would have been stuck
Yeah.
inside.
So what was it?
I don't know. I said, where is it? And he said, I don't know. It's in the insulation. I'm like, man. But anyway, that's what it was.
You know, I had a restriction one time, and it wasn't a mini split. It was a unitary. It was actually a hydro air coil. And, you know, they used to have the fixed orifice. You know, after the cap tubes came the fixed orifice. You have to match the number with the outdoor unit. And the unit was almost pumping itself down, right? So I put nitrogen in the thing, and I go and unscrew, you know, where the fixed orifice is.
Right.
I unscrewed it, and this thing, it must have been about 6 inches long, soft solder, because it was R22
Oh,
days.
wow.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was soft soldered. It wasn't 95.5. It was Stay Bright, number 8, I think it was.
Yep, Stay Bright 8.
8, or, yeah.
Stay right 8.
And that was in there, and then somebody had a little gap, and they keep putting it, keep filling it.
And it kept going down
going
and down,
in,
down,
and then-
down.
And this was on the second floor. It was in an attic unit, so who knows where the stuff, but it made itself to that piston, and it was just blocking
Yeah, it had no
everything.
flux inside to stick it to the pipe. It
Yeah.
was just,
Yep, that's it.
Wow.
so, yeah, there's, but that one there that I was talking about, I started walking the line set, and the line set was cut in 3 different spots. They had moved that unit 3 different times to get it where they finally needed it.
Yeah, I wish now, that story, Ralph, stinks, because you can't even tell us what it was.
It was a bunch of dirt. It was a bunch of Georgia red clay is
Yeah,
what it was.
I'm sitting here like, what the heck was it?
What is kind of interesting about it, though, is that without necessarily having your pressure gauges on there, you could still diagnose the
You know-
restriction
There you go.
based on temperature.
Based on, you know how long it took me to diagnose that? 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Just as long as it took to hook everything up.
Yeah.
And I was able to see it. And so everybody asked, well, is a maintenance tool really worth getting for M&P? I'm like, you're not going to use it on every call. But when you do need it, you're
Yeah.
going to need it. So yes, it's worth to have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to guess that on that job site was probably an apprentice who was eating gummy bears, and he dropped one into the piping by accident. And that's what came out of it. Is that, you feel better about
Yeah.
that, Paul?
No, I don't. I'm gonna
It was
say,
ice.
I'm,
It was
I'm
ice.
Gonna say no, I'm gonna say it was a 22 caliber cartridge.
Yep.
geez.
That, you know,
It probably was shaped like a bullet when it was shooting out of there.
I had an old. This is probably 25 years ago, and it was probably a 30-year-old heat pump, and it was all kinds. I mean, the amps were going crazy, the pressures were crazy, and it was a plugged filter dryer, the biflow
Oh, yeah.
filter
Yeah.
dryer
Yeah.
on the liquid line. And after recovering it, well, back in those days, you didn't have to recover anything. So, but let's just say I recovered it.
Of course you did. A
I-
bucket,
I-
a wide rag
I
recovery.
recovered it, and
It's a blow-through.
I cut the liquid line, and there must have been about a quart of sludge, thick sludge. It looked like chocolate syrup like you put on the sundae,
From a burnout.
except it was darker. It wasn't burning, the compressor was still running. But it was just sitting there clogging that filter dryer, and you know that thing's been running, you know, high, the thing's been burning that oil, and I said, gee, this thing is on its last legs. So I ended up going back like a week later and replacing it, but that was probably the dirtiest system I've ever seen.
I tell you, there's another one I did when I was in the field working for myself. the little bullet dryers on trains,
Yeah.
that desiccant inside, it had made it from probably 40 feet from the outdoor unit into the indoor coil.
I've seen that, the little BBs come out of those little pencil dryers. I've seen it.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's talk some specifics, and we can start with unitary and then compare it to a mini split and compare it to VRF. But let's think about this. Let's talk pressures. Let's throw our gauges on first, right? Because if you got a restriction, something's not working right. You're going to see what's happening in there. Let's take the blood pressure. Let's throw the gauges on there. So what are you going to find if there's a restriction?
Yeah, low suction, high head.
suction.
Depends on where it's at, though.
Depends where it's at. All right. So where do we want to talk first? Low side, high side?
The other thing is the type of restriction. I think it's important to say we're not just talking refrigerant restrictions, refrigerant piping, or flow restrictions. There's also airflow restrictions that can change pressures too.
Yeah.
So
Right,
we can
that's
keep
true.
it to, because we're talking about pressure, we'll talk about refrigerant,
Yeah, let's take
refrigerant restrictions.
Because airflow is a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you'd see a low suction side most likely, and then you'd have a increasing head pressure. So it starts to get higher and higher as we have less flow. We're basically going to deadhead against wherever that restriction is. So our head pressure is typically going to start to increase. Our suction line is going to start to decrease, and then we've talked about before, our compressor discharge temperature typically will start to elevate as well.
Yeah. So is there a difference in the way we troubleshoot a unitary split versus a mini split?
I would say, and you guys can correct me if you disagree, but I would say that there are some things to consider, which is that on a split style system or an inverter style heat pump system, there are different things that are typically going to cause a restriction.
Yeah.
Whereas a unitary, there's different components, right? We have electronic metering devices, our LEVs, but a unitary may still have
They
a
do.
TXV.
Yeah.
You're right,
Yeah.
and they have filter dryers on them typically.
Right.
You might see sight glasses, although that's not typically going to cause a restriction, but you could if it was brazed in improperly. So there's other components to consider too, just because of the difference. But
I'm going to look in the general places that it could be, but that's going to change from unitary to a mini split to a refrigerator to a critically charged system like maybe a medical refrigerator with cap tube. There are a lot of different components, a lot of different places that it can get that restriction can happen. And the most obvious, start with the most obvious.
Yeah.
If it's a cap tube system like a refrigerator or something, those small filter dryers. All it takes is for one of those to fall out of your van and fall on the ground and take a good hit.
Yeah.
And that desiccant breaks apart and it's going to clog up that cap tube in a heartbeat. Or if you're installing one of those filter dryers, you're going to be really careful not to plug that cap tube. Right. And then, like you said, when we go to a mini split system, now you're looking at LEVs, and that's a small,
it's an orifice, a small orifice.
Yeah. And then you got TXV on a unitary system or a piston.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times the pistons have gotten plugged.
Oh yeah.
With rubber plugs.
Yep.
Right. I had one when I first was out in the field, and I was very green to things, and we had a bunch of condominiums that were basically like cookie cutter. They were all the same, piped in the same, ductwork was the same across the whole thing. But one particular house, you throw your gauges on it, head pressure would go through the roof, bang, would knock out. And this was in
And high
cooling.
pressure.
Put it in heating, because they were all heat pumps, put it into heating, ran just fine.
Yeah.
So I was looking at everything but a restriction.
Yeah.
All right, at that point. And sure enough, last resort, and this is after days of working on this, pumped it down, pulled everything apart until I got to the piston. And what did I find at the piston?
Yeah.
Pieces of rubber plug.
Yep.
And it would just shoot back and forth and going, flow would be reversed, it'd go the other way, it'd run fine in heat.
Wow.
Wouldn't run in cooling. So that was just a huge learning experience for me.
But you want to know what makes finding a restriction tough? Is when a guy goes there before you, a person, a tech goes there before you, and they don't know it's a restriction, and they see
they jam it
see a
full.
low black, so they put more refrigerant in there. Now you got to find a restriction with an overcharge. You just
Yep.
made it 10 times harder to find.
That's why putting one hose on it, the one hose method, is not. I'm hoping that those days are over.
Oh, they got to be.
Yeah.
First of all, putting hoses on is when you suspect the problem. Last resort.
Well, that's on our stuff, but regular
No,
unitary.
I think that should be everything. So
No, I agree with you.
So quick story. Oh, hey, Bryn, Cue the story music.
We'll do
Yeah,
it.
this episode is all about stories.
Right?
Yeah, because I got another one after this.
I used to teach in a trade school. Right? We had the HVAC program, and like for instance, the AC is a 12-week long program. 12-week electrical for AC, 6 weeks electrical, 6 weeks mechanical. On those 6 weeks for mechanical, there's only 5 weeks where they're actually, because the last week is going to be the final exams and everything. And these students would practice pumping a unit down. They would practice recovering and charging, just using the same refrigerant, and we'd have to get new refrigerant. And the only refrigerant we would lose is the refrigerant that's in the hoses.
Yep.
With 12 guys in 5 weeks practicing this every day, just the de minimis amount of refrigerant.
2.3 ounces of refrigerant.
Right, but the de minimis amount of refrigerant you'd lose in the hoses from these guys connecting and disconnecting would be 2 jugs of refrigerant.
2.3 ounces, Paul.
Right? So anytime you put your hoses on a system, you are robbing that system unless you pump it down. You are robbing that system of refrigerant.
Even when you pump it down, Paul, we can't pump it down all the way to 0. So you're still losing refrigerant that 10 to 20 pounds you're supposed to pump it down to no lower than that.
Yeah.
So you're losing that refrigerant in the line.
So it's not just our stuff. If you check the airflow and the airflow's good and you got a good delta T across the coil, there's no reason to put gauges on unless you suspect a system or you need to take out that refrigerant, because you're going to take refrigerant with it. So it's not just our stuff; it's everything. Don't put gauges on unless you really have to.
Yeah. Right. Also, we'll get to your story in a second, but just because we're still on the topic of metering devices and pistons versus TXVs, the location on unitary, typically we find that metering device at the coil inside, whereas mini split, heat pump style, inverter style, most of the time
gonna be
metering
outside.
devices are
Yeah.
outside. And so that's just another thing to pay attention to is where the actual
Yeah, and then if it's a
restriction
ported
could be
model,
in that refrigerant system.
If it's a ported model, finding the restrictions, it gets a little harder because you're sharing the same common suction line.
Sure. Yep.
So it gets
Now
a
you're
little
talking
harder.
about things getting harder. Now look at a VRF system, like an R2 system, where you have maybe 5 or 6 LEVs in the outdoor unit.
Oh, yeah.
You're, again, probably not looking at something downstream at the branch controller. You're maybe looking at a restriction right at the outdoor unit.
In which case, now I'm a touchy-feely guy. In which case, I'm going to start looking for temperature differences.
Yeah, that's when maintenance tool comes in handy.
Yeah, and maintenance tool. But now you need maintenance.
Yeah, you definitely need maintenance tool.
Yeah.
So
The other thing too is some of those restrictions are not necessarily specifically for refrigerant flow. Like with our NGen R2 system, we use LEVs for the inverter circuit.
yeah,
That's right.
So to cool the inverter, we have that. But if that was to be restricted, we wouldn't find out until the inverter
Till the board went
overheated
out.
and blew, right? And so then when you even discover that restriction is after you go through maybe an inverter or two,
Right.
Or you spend some time on maintenance tool and look, see what's happening. But you said you had a story about a restriction?
So I did a 3-ton P series in the Georgia DOT. We put a bunch of, I think there was 12 screens. So when you're driving down the interstate and all the cameras, so if they saw accident, they could respond pretty quickly. Well, I put the unit in that room behind the TVs so it would stay cool. Well, I was all proud of myself. I got it all pumped down or vacuumed down and ready to start up. Open the valves. Pulls right down into restriction. What in the world? So I was like, man, what is going on? I looked everywhere, and there was I didn't find any restriction anywhere. Well, it turned out to be that the manufacturer at that time was shooting double rubber plugs into the line set, and that's what it was.
Manufacturer of the line set, you mean?
Yeah, the manufacturer
wow.
shot because
Whoops.
I pulled the plug out, and then
Still went in there.
still went in there. So
And we've had people, I've heard stories and I've actually seen the photos of techs that braze, they'll put a couple and they braze copper line sets together and they leave the cap on. And I don't care if it's a plastic cap or a rubber cap. I would think the rubber cap would be harder to put a coupling on. But if you braze and you leave the cap on, you did it.
You'll smell it.
You should not walk away from that. You messed up, so fix it. Just don't leave it for somebody else to find.
Right. But what are some things that we can find that could cause a restriction in the system? Let's be honest.
Well,
So rubber,
dirt.
we have the screens everywhere.
Yep. Strainers.
Right? We don't have the strainers. We don't have.
We
filter
have
dryers.
strainers, but even if you don't, let's talk unitary. Let's talk anything. What are some things that
contaminants
end
in
up
general.
into?
Yeah,
the
well, we
system?
already talked about the filter dryers could be a contaminant. The metering devices, you take a TXV, the bulb falls off, or the tube from the sensor
That's a
bulb
good point.
breaks off.
Yeah, needle slam shut.
Yeah, there's all I think metering devices are very commonplace, no matter what type of
Well,
metering device it is.
That's because all the contaminant has to go to that metering device, and the metering device is going to stop it.
What about additives?
Oh my God! Don't even get started. Don't.
Well, no.
Well-
let's not go down that road. But
No.
there are additives out there that
There
can
are
cause a
additives.
restriction. Just be very cautious on what you put into any.
Can I make a
system.
disclaimer?
Yeah.
We as a manufacturer actually add stuff to the compressors, right, to help with moisture and some other stuff. What happens is people don't know what we add to it, right? And this goes for every manufacturer out there. They're adding other stuff to the compressor. But when you start mixing chemicals,
Right.
nobody knows how those chemicals are going to react. Because I know I was around when the TXVs, when Copeland added the rust inhibitor to the compressors. Oh, I don't know how many TXVs I had changed because of that stuff that built up on that little needle. It was terrible.
Yeah, and what's going to happen over time with those chemicals, and that's the thing. It's a good point you bring up. We can't see what's happening once
Right.
we put anything into our systems, right?
I'll tell you this again. Stories. Don't cue the music for this one.
Okay.
There's the stuff. I just want to say this: the only thing we want to see in the refrigerant piping after evacuation is the refrigerant itself and the oil that comes with it, and that's it. And the oil that's in the compressor. We don't recommend anything other than that. There's stuff that's on the market that they'll try to sell that you can put in. One of the things they sell you it reminds me of fixing a radiator leak on a car. If there's a leak, it's this stuff goes in there, and I'm not going to mention the brand name. You know what it is, but it goes in here and it senses air and it hardens and fixes the leak. Hold on. There was a job that I heard of when I first started here that had a BC controller. It was a VRF job, and they put this stuff in here. And so what does it do when it senses air? It hardens, right? It basically caused a restriction at all of the BC connections because all of the flare nuts were loose. Because they didn't tighten them down, which tells me right away they never did a pressure test and they didn't do a proper evacuation. They didn't have a micron gauge or anything. They didn't even look at it because even with gauges, you would have found that leak. It wouldn't have pulled it down to a vacuum. So and that was what that stuff did. So I don't like that stuff. There's some people out there that just swear by it, and so I'm just not a fan of any additive.
Yeah, and our stance with everything is whatever you do put into our systems, do it with an abundance of caution. Make sure that you look at all of the warranty terms and all of that. Any app notes that we may have on our website, any type of policy notes that may affect the warranty. Take a look at all of that, right? But we're talking about sealants, leak detection dyes, anything like that go into the system and how that can affect
Definitely no
the
dyes.
system.
Definitely
Right.
no dyes.
So,
Yeah, definitely stuff to avoid, but sometimes it's incidental too. Like those are all intentional, typically when we're putting additives in the system, but there's incidental restrictions or contaminants that can get into a system, like copper shavings during piping. We talked about plugs, but there's incidental. And like one of the things that I mention a lot when I teach is we have that magnet in the bottom of the compressor. Then that magnet is there to catch what is inevitable to happen in that compressor is you're going to get some metal shavings.
Right.
And so if there's an abundance of contaminants in the system, that magnet gets stuffed with the contaminants. And then when we do have that metal shavings just over the course of a compressor, just like your car engine, right? When you first get a car, they tell you don't run it hard until it's had its break-in period. That's so that metal-on-metal contact with the lubrication kind of sets a little bit. It does shave off small amounts of metal. Same exact thing happens in the compressor. Over time, you are going to get some of those metal shavings. If the magnet is already stuffed because of contaminants like emery cloth and other ferrous contaminants, you end up with no room for over time. The oil just gets so diluted by all of the metal shavings that come off in the compressor during
copper,
normal operation.
The copper shavings from deburring.
Yeah.
Sheetrock dust.
Sheetrock.
Yeah.
We found pebbles and
Oh, yeah.
sand inside
Yeah.
these things. So, and we talked about this to death with poor piping principles.
Yeah.
And it's just a problem out there for everybody. And I just don't think folks coming out of school are being taught that properly, or if they are being taught, they just don't care.
And another thing that we teach in class is no soft solder. And right away, the students are like, "Oh, it's because of the pressure, right?" No, it's not.
Nothing to do.
Because soft solder can hold in a ton of
To get
pressure.
that stay bright, it's 1500 psi.
Yeah, that stay bright will work. That stay bright will hold the pressure, but it's the flux that comes with it.
Turns
that's
to
the
a gel.
problem.
And there's nothing wrong with the soft solder. It just does not have a place in mini splits because of all the LEVs and the flux that can get into all of those components. And, with enough flux mixing in with the oil, contaminates the oil.
So that brings up a soft soldering. So I'm going to ask this question, you guys, because I know it's always a fight. Once or twice a year on Facebook, it'll show up. If you cut the flares off one of our units, you'll void the warranty.
No.
No, absolutely
You
not.
can pipe it with how you want to pipe it. Now, on that topic, because of the transition, I have noticed, and it's something to be aware of, that our manual is pretty firm about not reusing piping and using copper, which is
Right.
different from what we used to see. We used to kind of just not really have a stance other than make sure it's compliant. I have seen some of our manuals start to say not to reuse piping, and that's because of the transition stuff. So, I've had contractors in, and they're diamond contractors, and they, with the 410 equipment, had made a habit out of using aluminum piping because it was just easy for them.
That yoga pipe,
what
all
they're
those other
finding-
ones. No.
And what they're finding is now that the manuals are stipulating for copper, they're kind of changing their type, which is great. The fact that they're going through the manual and seeing it is awesome, but it was something that they actually brought up is we used to use aluminum. We found in one of the manuals it was calling for only for copper, so they had to make that adjustment. So it's something to look at.
Back in the day when I was installing mini splits, I'd stick those pipes through the wall, I'd cut off the flare nuts, and I'd braze.
Yeah.
Low nitrogen,
Yeah.
and I'd braze. And
I always tell guys in class if they're doing like a 2-story and they're doing, most of the time you have 2 guys on an install, right? So when I was in the field, I would always cut the ones off the 2nd story for sure, because it's always easier to fix a leak when there's 2 guys there than there is to fix a leak when there's 1 guy there. So cut it off on the install.
Yeah. The only thing I'll caution against too is typically, depending on how far back you cut on the other side of that flare, that's metric.
Yeah.
So you might have a hard time finding a fitting. I know specifically, it wasn't Mitsubishi product, but they had cut off the flares, and they used a 1/2-inch coupling and kind of pinched it down, and then to do the brazing. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, you
it
gotta
might
be
be metric
careful.
on the other side of that flare.
Well,
so
that's
it'd be
the important
hard
thing.
to find a
though.
coupling.
You got to stick with that pipe size.
Yeah.
That outdoor unit dictates the pipe diameter, so you use that pipe size all the way back to the indoor unit.
Yep.
All right, and so let's get back to the restrictions. So we've talked about, is there any place that we haven't talked about yet where you might find a restriction? Have any of you ever seen a restriction on the low side?
Absolutely.
Where on the low
Oh,
side?
yeah.
Just in the piping, plug lift in the piping.
Yeah.
Right before the compressor. What's going to happen then? You're going to have a high pressure event. Either way.
Yeah.
You're pumping, essentially trying to pump that system down at that point.
I'll tell you where another restriction is, how we say don't make traps?
Yep.
Well, I've seen it to where when they come down the wall, they went below the valve and then came back up, and that pipe
Oil.
filled with oil.
Oil restrictions, yeah.
So that's a good one, Ralph, and I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about this real quick the other day in the office, Paul, about rolling up line sets.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And Hicks, story time again. This episode's full of stories, but this story, I think, and I tell this in class all the time, and it kind of, a light bulb goes off when the student, they're like kind of like, whoa. I was at a customer's house. He had another manufacturer. It wasn't Mitsubishi, and I forgot. It was a mini split, though, one on either side of the house, and 2 rolled up line sets. All right, and he hadn't cut his grass. I just remember this. He hadn't cut his grass in a long time. His grass was growing like 2 or 3 feet high, and I was tripping over rusted compressors that were in the grass. So there was a history there. Told me he had replaced a lot of compressors, but why? And I was there trying to fix one thing, and I forgot but I did remove the rolled up line sets. I told him, look, we gotta just let me flare these and bring them right to the unit. You don't need all this line set. And when I did that, and I cut the old coils away, the weight of the coils, and I feel like I've told the story on a podcast before.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Full of oil. But what my gauges were showing me was a pump down scenario.
Yeah.
Because of all that oil that was restricting, that compressor could not overcome the amount of oil. Now think about it. He had compressors changed over and over and over the years. Mm-hmm. How much oil was added to that system and where was it accumulating? It was accumulating in the rolls of copper.
Yep.
So that's another type of restriction.
So you've said that story before, and it made me say what I'm about to say. If you condemn a compressor and you diagnose a bad compressor and you replace it, if you don't find out what killed that first compressor, that second compressor and that third and fourth and fifth, they're all going to die unless you figure out what killed
in less amount of time too. So
Yes.
if the first one took 2 years, the next one's going to take a year to die.
Yeah, so you need to find out what killed that compressor. You don't find out what killed it, the second one's going to die.
Yeah.
So I had one time where I saw that little trap, and I had the tech cut it out, but he was sitting on the ground, and I made him blow nitrogen through it. He was sitting on the ground with that cut pipe, or where he took the flare off. It was in his lap. And before I could get a rag, before I got the R out, he was soaked with oil.
No.
Soaked with oil.
Yeah, no good.
I used to build Cascade equipment, and Cascade is just ultra low temperature. So you've got two refrigerant systems, and the condenser of one is an evaporator of another, right? So these ultra low temperatures, and these evaporators, they would be extremely cold, well below zero. And it would be very common at times after so many hours of running, you'd have to go out there and just drain the evaporator because that's where all the oil
Oh,
would go.
yeah. Well, so when I used to do, in my early days, doing maintenances, every time I pull my gauges off the suction line, all this oil would shoot out. It was because of poor airflow. So poor airflow will cause a refrigerant restriction because of oil.
Yeah. So other things to consider as far as restrictions go is how the system will behave if there is a restriction.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we talked about, obviously our pressures will be off, but what does the end user notice, right? What is the homeowner going to call about typically?
Right.
They're either going to call because they have poor cooling, or that the unit keeps shutting off,
Yep.
right? If it's a unitary, or even our equipment, you might have a high pressure switch that keeps kicking it off, and then once it comes down in pressure, it's going to kick back on. So you might get calls for short cycling. You could have it locked out on high pressure, or you could have just pour cooling if it's on a huge restriction.
Yeah,
but
if
enough
it's a
to
small
affect the
restriction,
refrigerant flow.
something maybe bouncing around in the at a strainer or something like that.
Yeah. So just be aware of that. I think we got most of them. Anything else you want to add on the restrictions?
No, but I just want to make one thing clear. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. So we got the video thing on here. We're going to try this again. And if you're watching this on video, I didn't just wave at you a little while ago. These ladies are walking by and I wave at them.
Yeah, we got to do some coaching on that part.
Yeah. So that's just what happens. So people walk by and wave, I wave back. I'm not waving at the camera. I'm just waving at the people who walk by behind the camera.
So there is something I want to add, though. Whenever you're doing an install, make sure that if you have extra line set left over and you're going to put it in your truck, crimp it off, braze it shut. Because I don't know, I always tell guys in class, how many of you guys drive vans? And they raise their hands. I'm like, if you was to sweep your truck out or your van out 1 week, how long would it take to get dusty again? Well, the next week. So that dust is going inside that line set, which is going to go through the system.
Point.
Yeah, I always had a spiel about that too. Just because I did heating oil, I did gas, generators, and so I had all kinds of stuff. And I don't know if you ever used that cherry bomb powder for heating oil. That stuff, if you knock over the tin, it just makes a cloud in the van immediately. And the whole van will smell like cherry.
What is that?
It's like a oil absorbent powder. So you kind of put it on like a small oil leak, and
Like a
it'll
speedy dry type.
yeah, just like it makes it go completely.
Does it
away,
make
but
it
has a
smell better?
Yeah, it gets rid of that diesel smell.
I used to use kitty litter because
Yeah.
litter because it works. It absorbs everything. But you know what? You just reminded me of something, and I totally forgot about this, and I don't remember all the details. I just remember finding in this restriction in a suction line that shocked the hell out of me. Somebody else installed it, didn't work from day one, and I could give you guys a million guesses as to what I found in there, and you would never guess. I found a dead mouse
Oh wow.
Oh.
Whoops.
In what?
in the suction
piping.
line. In the suction line,
He just
a dead mouse.
Yeah.
So that, to your point,
yeah.
well, somebody had the thing, a mouse got in there and died. They used whatever they're going to use, and they raised it in there.
Got in the van. You think?
Hopefully
In
it
the
was
line
dead
set?
already.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was,
A
well,
horrible death.
A little cold.
Right.
Just a
No, I
bug.
would have crawled through there. But and then something else. If you're installing a unit up on a roof and you hadn't got the outdoor unit set yet, braze that crimp it and braze that into that line setup. I can't tell you how many
Yes.
coils that I have seen water.
okay. Electrical tape and duct tape are not adequate to seal ACR piping.
We're
Crimp
gonna have
it
to
and
start
braze
calling
it
this
shut.
podcast the Broken Record Podcast. We nail home the same 7 points in every episode.
Just listen to one, you hear them all.
Did we talk about ramen noodles yet?
I don't
No,
know.
get out of
think
here
so.
with that stuff.
I don't think we have.
Wait a minute. Are we
Or
done-
barbecue?
Are we done with restrictions?
Fat side up?
Are we done with restrictions? Don't say that. People will get email.
They get angry over that.
Blue cheese?
No.
I think
Restrictions.
so.
Are we done with restrictions?
Think so?
I think so, yeah.
But let's ask one more question. Do I diagnose a restriction in a mini split differently than I do on a unitary?
I would
No.
say no.
No.
I would say no. I would say, Steve brought it up earlier, no matter what refrigerant system you're in, you're diagnosing
It's an
the
air
restriction
conditioner.
the same way. It's a refrigeration.
So I got the story about rolled up line sets that I want.
You got that?
Listen, and it's just as bad to roll them up and lay them horizontally.
Yeah, horizontal,
Yeah.
vertical, I don't care. We don't want them.
Well, it's not just as bad. It's still bad. It's wrong.
Exactly.
Stop doing wrong things.
Stop doing it. Yes.
All right. So the disappointing thing about this whole thing so far,
No food.
well, it hasn't started yet. It doesn't start for another 2 hours still. We're here early.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't seen anybody bring any food out yet. Usually we get fed every 2 hours.
Wait till tomorrow.
It's
Oh
yeah,
my
they're just
God.
getting things
That's
rolling today.
that's the only part about these things. Where I don't want to eat for 3 days after I leave.
Yeah, it's a heavy week.
Yeah.
Yeah. My cardiologist told me I have to take my blood pressure every night for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
This was last week. I met with her, and I said, make it 3 weeks because I'm going away next week. I don't want to take my blood pressure there.
Yeah.
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 Speaking of restrictions,
You know, I probably gained 30, 35 pounds since I started here.
No.
lightweight.
But yeah,
I don't
well,
think so.
Let me tell you, the only time I eat is when I'm at an event or classes. I mean,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
So I'm not eating like you guys.
The
I
sheer
gained 35
amount,
pounds this month.
The sheer amount of food that we.
the sheer amount of sodium that we consume
Oh,
on a
yeah.
training week or one
Oh,
of these
yeah, yeah, yeah,
events,
yeah.
it's
I wonder why my blood
it's
pressure is getting
never
higher.
ending. Yeah.
I put salt on Chinese food.
I am excited though. The gym here has free weights.
Oh yeah,
They have
we
benches
talked
and
about-
squat racks. I
Steve
can't
said
wait.
you would like the gym.
Oh yeah,
You saw
cannot
it.
wait.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah.
But,
I remember I said I was eating sunflower seeds.
oh yeah.
Well, I looked up sunflower seeds,
of sodium.
and the long-term effects of eating sunflower seeds every day
Yeah?
are pretty bad.
Really?
Well, yeah, it's got all that
and
salt in it.
they are calorie. They're little explosive bags of calories. It said.
Interesting.
Yes, yeah.
Is it the sodium that they are talking about as far as long-term effects, or is it the
It
lots of saturated fat?
It causes some type of disease if you eat it every day, and you eat certain amounts every day. It can cause.
So that 5-pound
sickness.
bag of ranch that you had is probably not.
No, I didn't have. I had the jumbo bag, but it was just salt.
8 pounds. 8 pounds. So Steve's office is next to mine, and for the last, I want to say the last 2 months, all I heard is That's it.
Like a
He's
squirrel.
he's been eating these literally like a bag of sunflower seeds a day. You know, you like that scene in.
So I looked it up. I thought I was doing something good.
No.
No, it's just like
You remind
turns
me.
out
You
too
remind
much
me-
of one thing.
Always.
That's the way it is.
But you remind me of that scene in Naked Gun when they're eating pistachios.
Yeah.
And they're in the car and they're talking. They go up the door and there's like a 4 foot high. pile
Leslie
of
Nielsen's
pistachios.
got red lips, and he opens the door and all the
George
shells
Kennedy's
are piled up. Yeah.
All right, so
anyway.
we are going to be doing more podcasts from here. This is our first one, and
Yes.
so in the next few weeks is where we'll be, and we hope you like it. As always, send us your suggestions, your tips, anything you want to hear. We love to get mail.
Especially from Nick.
I was just about to say, except from Nick.
I was gonna say,
we're good.
you don't have to remind them.
Although he did give us a clever one last week when we talked about the eco den and air to water.
Yeah, the hydronics.
It was the hydronics, right? And he said, "Oh, this episode is going to put you guys in hot water."
Yep.
I thought that was clever.
Yeah, and if you have anyone that you want us to put on the show this week while we're at the DSG conference, text us. What do they use for that text? Is it Buzzsprout?
No, they go right to wherever. Like if you're listening on Spotify or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It says text us, like whatever platform you're listening to it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
there's-
Okay, yeah,
there's-
By the time they get this
hold-
podcast comes out.
No, they will.
Oh, that's
no,
right.
listen, this
Oh, no,
podcast-
no. It'll be out this week.
too.
It'll be out this
But
week.
Where
That's
you
right, yeah.
but where you see the description of the podcast, it'll say "send us a text" at the very end of that. Click on that. Type in your text if you use. Obviously, it's from your phone. But again, if you do that, we don't have a means to respond to you other than when we talk about it on the show.
Right.
So we can't text you back. And the only thing it gives us the last 4 digits of the phone number and the city. I would imagine it's the city the phone number is registered in, like whatever that one, Idaho Falls.
Yeah, it gives you the
Idaho.
first three of the area code. So.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye, everyone.
See you on the
Later.
next one.